What's up, everybody? I'm ScottVordem, and have you ever wanted to lift the limitations of OBS Studio beyond what you currently do? Apologize for my voice, I had a rough day today. So, I'm going to show you how to bypass the limitations of OBS Studio, and I must remind you that the codecs, encoders, muxers, demuxers, whatever, that OBS uses for recording have no limitations. The limitations are set specifically in the UI, and I'm not sure why the developers don't want to implement these features into the user interface. Normally, they just won't for some reason, but basically, we're going to be modifying a particular file in OBS Studio to... What do I keep doing this for? We're going to be modifying a file in OBS Studio to help manipulate the setting just a little bit more beyond what you can normally set in OBS Studio. So just a quick example. This is your normal OBS Studio setup, probably. Let's do a test file, just so you can see its quality. I'll be using media info to show you these settings. As you can see here, pretty standard. You have your 2560 by 1440 resolution, 60 frames per second, and for your audio, you have multiple audio tracks with 48,000 Hertz, and not sure why it doesn't show the bitrate here. It's a bit frustrating why it doesn't show the bitrate, but for audio, and I don't know why it doesn't show the bitrate for audio. You know the standard limitations for OBS Studio, right? You know, you go to output here and recording. You set this to standard. You set your settings here. Then you set your frame rate here. Notice how common FPS values. Oh, but I want to go higher than 60. Not a big deal. I'll just change it to integer FPS value. Now it can go up to 120 FPS. But what if you wanted to go higher? It simply won't let you go higher than 120. I'm trying to type the number 1. Not working. Only goes up to 120. And maybe over here in audio, you want this to go higher than 48,000 Hertz, but your only two options are these two, and you can't manually type in a value. Well, I'm going to show you how you can go up to 96,000 Hertz in OBS Studio. And one of the more frustrating things for OBS Studio is its audio quality. For stereo recording in OBS Studio for audio, you can only go up to a 320 bitrate, which I don't like. I prefer 512 because it sounds a lot nicer. But I can't manually set that value here. And if I change my channels to 2.1 or anything higher, it's gonna have me restart. Now I'm at 2.1 surround sound mode, and now look what I can do to my audio. I can now go higher than 320, all the way up to 1024. What the heck, OBS Studio? Why don't I have this in stereo mode? It makes no sense. So I'm going to show you how to bypass these somewhat annoying limitations. But before I show you, make sure you configured OBS Studio first through here. Because what we're going to be doing here, you won't be able to change stuff right away. I'll show you after the hack. So basically, you want to set your settings here. You want to make sure on the recording tab, set this to advanced and set this to standard, and then configure everything else in here to your own settings. You don't necessarily have to copy mine. Don't worry about setting your audio here, but make sure you set your audio devices up as well as everything else here if you use them. Set your bass and output resolution as well as your downscale filter, and don't worry about your FPS value. And set everything in here. After you set everything in here in this range, I'm now going to show you where to go to bypass the limitations. But first of all, make sure OBS Studio is closed completely. I know what you see here are incredibly old videos, and I'm not sure why I haven't deleted them yet. Maybe because I guess I have a hard time letting something I made go. You want to open up File Explorer, go to the top here, click it, type %appdata %, and press enter. And the reason why I'm bringing you here is because if you look right here, OBS Studio also works in this directory. And if you open it, you get access to some INI files. The one we want to modify is in basic profiles untitled, and it's the basic.ini. You want to open this in the text editor, pick whatever one you want. I'll be using Notepad++. Whatever you use, you're most likely going to see the same thing I am. And look, notice how the settings here are what we saw in the GUI. And I want to repeat myself here. The limitations are set in the GUI. Any encoder OBS Studio uses can support way more than those limitations. And a lot of people don't realize that. So, I forgot to mention the GUI, but if you forgot to set your frame rate to integer, then change FPS type to 1. 1 is integer mode, 0 is common mode. And the reason why, because if you change the value here under FPS common, it won't work. It still stays at 60. So, change it to integer, so that way it uses this value instead, and this is the value that doesn't draw back to 60. So, just for a proof of concept, I don't see why you ever need to record this high unless you're doing slow motion, to be honest, but since OBS can only go up to 120, which changes value to something higher, like 165. Not 1,000, 165. 165. There we go. There we go. This is my monitor's native refresh rate, and I generally like to record at that, but again, because my editing software can only go up to 60 anyway, it's kind of pointless for me to go this high. To reiterate, make sure FPS type is set to 1, and then set your value in this line right here. Now, if you scroll down a little bit, you notice you see track 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 bitrate. This is where you change your audio bitrate, and if you look down here, the channel setup, I am still in stereo mode. So, to go up to 512, you simply delete these values and go to, and type 512. 512. 512. That's all you have to do. You now require a 512 bitrate, although I can't physically show you this because for some reason the bitrate information doesn't show up in the file. You're just gonna believe me on that. But after I show you that this actually works, you may actually believe me. So, last thing is to change the sample rate to 96,000 Hertz. And I suppose you're wondering how to do that. Well, it's easy. You go down here where it says audio and change sample rate to 96,000. Now, I've actually tried going higher up to 192,000. It bumps back down to 96,000. And I'm not sure if that's a limitation for OBS Studio or limitation to the audio codec I was using at the time, which was AAC. I don't know if it can go up that high, so I really don't know. But last I tested, it doesn't go higher than 96,000. Now, when you open this file for the first time, you may not have this line. If you don't, go to the audio section here and put this directly underneath the word audio. Sample rate was a capital. Well, there goes my camera. It's a capital S and a capital R. And then you put in your value. You can type it manually. Can you just fine. I was thinking I have a bad USB cord tied to my camera. I need to fix that. So no more camera from this point on. I'm tired of trying to get it to work. I don't have any other cable at the moment. So after you set up your settings here, this is a very important step. Make sure you saved your changes. Go here where it says basic.ini, which is a file we just modified. Right click on it, properties, and check read only. If you do not do this, the recording will not work. Meaning that it'll say that's recording, but doesn't create the file. And when you try to stop it, you have to force it to shut down because it hangs. Yeah, setting the file to read only doesn't make that happen. So if you do experience that, you probably didn't have basic.ini set to read only. You can now reopen OBS Studio, and you may notice a big difference in the preview latency. Look how much smoother that is. That your instinctive response is to verify your changes. Well, if you take a look, your changes are not reflected in the GUI. But because, see, look, 4.1 kilohertz, even though I had that set to 48 originally, it doesn't show the files here because the GUI wasn't written to display those values in this particular mode, if that makes sense. I don't know how else to explain that better. But I can assure you that as long as you set the file to read only, the changes we made to that file are there. And you can test it by just doing a simple test record. You may notice that the preview here is much smoother. So I'm going to do a simple test record for OBS Studio here. Yada yada. I'm going to stop. I'm going to go to my recording directory. Oh look, there's a file. and take a look. Take a look inside for media info. Alright, so we have the general thing here, yada yada video. Oh look! 165 frames per second. We'll scroll down to audio. Oh hey look! 96,000 hertz. And again, the bitrate's not shown here, but it's 96,000 hertz for every single audio track. Here's what the file looks like. Now that's pretty smooth on my part, but you guys are seeing this in 60. And just to prove to you that there is audio, I'm going to change my mic track and restart the video. Record for OBS Studio here. There's audio. Yada yada. See, there's audio. And that's how you give OBS Studio better settings. I hope you all found this helpful. And I know there's been several requests to get it to OBS to basically do what we just did, but this is how you do it. And I read somewhere that they actually allowed these changes through a config file, but never specified what config file that was. So basically, what we just did was hack the profile named Untitled up here, and just basically modified some values that can no longer be changed. Now please keep in mind, because we set that file to read only, any changes you make here are not going to be saved, because the changes you make here are stored in that file, and because it's set to read only, it simply will not save to the file. You have to readjust the settings every time. So if you want to change something, just go back to that file, right click on it, properties, uncheck read only, press apply, make your change, and set it back to read only. And again, if you don't set it to read only, it's not going to record properly. So with that being said, I hope you all had a better day than I did today. Gosh, today was rough. So, Mondays, I swear. So, I'll see you in the next video. See you then. I need to find myself a better title card background. Eventually.